joined here today with Tom Littlewood, and you've been doing some amazing things over the past few years, and we'd love to...
Look, you work with at-risk youth. You're on the front line. So when you first, let me ask you this, Tom, when you first hear that the government is considering or is moving towards legalization, what's your gut, your first reaction? You're on the front lines.
Well, I've been waiting for this from the 60s. But I mean, I think it's a great thing because the stigma around it is some of the things that attract the young people to it. And
well, because you can't have it, you want it.
That's right. Church on time makes me party, right?
Right.
But we've got this, I mean, nobody wants it happening for kids. You know, everyone's talking 19, 20, 18. Some people are saying 25. I think having it at a reasonable age is really important because they're going to get it anyway.
Oh, Tom.
I've never seen a short supply with the kids I work with, right?
Apparently you're having some trouble with your mic. I'm going over here
This
while
is
we
real
work on your mic,
live
and maybe it'll pick up on mine, Tom.
Okay. How about that?
I'll get
Can you
closer over
hear
here
Tom
then,
now?
Is that better?
Can you hear Tom now on my mic?
How is that going?
Is anyone talking to me? Okay, it's good.
Okay.
So Tom, while we
here.
work on your mic, as we were asking you, what then would be the ideal? What is the ideal age? Or again, everyone's different. Is there such a thing as an ideal age?
Well, I think with youth, I think it's best 18, 19. That's reasonable. It's not going to stop 16-year-olds from smoking it.
Well,
I mean,
but that's an interesting
it's
point.
inevitable too. It's right.
Yeah.
It's going to happen if it's.
But I think that the more the conversation happens around it without the stigma around it, we're going to have young people being able to make more reasonable decisions on it. I think that a lot of the different places that have legalized it, they've watched the use in adolescence go down. There's nothing turns a kid off more than watching his dad smoke up. You know, he wants to do something else all of a sudden. You know, he doesn't want what his dad's doing. So a lot of that attraction is gone. We're dealing with a different plant, though, than what we started with. I mean...
Oh, you mean like, well, I'm going to move back as your mic works,
Okay.
but are you talking about, I think it's okay, Nikita. Are you talking about the strength of what we're using? The pot's different than it was 25, 35 years ago?
Well, artificial selection. You know, you have a wolf, and then you have a chihuahua. And the chihuahua thinks it's a wolf, right? It's the other way with pot. Cannabis has gone from a chihuahua to a wolf. We used to have about 50-50 CBD, THC within the content of your average cannabis, and the amount of the psychoactive ingredients was much less. They've basically done some amazing developments for a 12-foot outdoor plant is now this big in a biker's basement, right? So they've really changed the plant. They've really changed what it is. And when they broke the bond between THC and CBD, so they are able to increase THC to the place where they have it today, that is a real problem. And then you've got products like Shatter and Dab and all these other products that are really high levels of THC with none of the CBD, which is the mellow part, to mediate the high. So when you got a young mind that is still developing, smoking Dab or Shatter or some of these really high THC strains, that's a problem because they have a developing brain, and the number one cause of psychosis in youth in Canada is THC psychosis. But it's not the danger of the plant, it's the danger of what we've done to the plant.
How we're using it.
So a lot of the kids I work with, I'm not anti-pot. I just look at them, I say, do I look like I'm anti-pot?
Right.
I don't use the product myself. I have some more natural ways of doing it, and I really hate paying a dealer to get those natural ways. But I tell them, when you go to a dispensary, ask for a product that is 50-50 THC CBD, and you'll have a lot more mellow experience. You're not going to have this high kind of paranoid kind of experience. Because they mix this stuff, they smoke this high-end stuff, and then they do something like E or Special K or these other drugs.
It's the mixture.
And then the combination takes them right through the roof. Or sometimes just some of the stuff the doctors have them on, prescribing. And you get a tug-of-war between, a local dispensary and the psychiatrist, and the kid's trying to get high, and the psychiatrist is trying to bring them down, and medications counter-interact, and so it's not a good formula. So a lot more education has to be done, is what I'm saying.
Would you consider it to be harmful for youth? Because
Well,
there's some talk.
what if you're 23? Is it harmful or not?
But there's some talk too with kids that have medical ailments and problems, and they're using marijuana in some kind of form, where it's CBD or oils and things like that. And I've heard stories of kids that have epilepsy.
Oh, absolutely.
And now,
it's a miracle drug. And for post-traumatic stress disorder, it's a miracle drug. For chemo sickness and nausea around that, it's a miracle drug. I believe these herbs were given to us, and we don't have cannabis receptors in our brain by accident. We've evolved with these plants for thousands and thousands of years. And the last thing I want a kid to believe is it's evil. You know, the Nixon-Reagan mentality, right. Just say no. I want them to ask, how it was growing? Was that clone, the baby clone, was it dipped in Avid before it was sold to the Mr. Organic, and he grew it in his thing? And if he's got a $10,000 crop in his little grow room, and all of a sudden he has mites or fungus, Mr. Organic can change to Mr. Spray Can pretty quick. You know, he'll keep his stash clean because he's Mr. Organic, but nobody's going to say $10,000 worth of pot. Oh well,
right? Cost of doing business.
Yeah, sorry.
I hope they would say that, but I know the reality. So, not only are you dealing with all these things, you're also dealing with pesticides. You're dealing with fungicides. You're dealing with molds. You're dealing with all these things. And I'm all for a really good, clean, regulated, they know what the content of the THC, they know the content of the CBD, they know what's going on with the product. There's been it's organic, it hasn't been exposed to chemicals. At least you got a level playing field then. And then you can tell a kid, it's your decision, but be wise.
Let me ask you this, and you hear this all the time, because we're going to run out of time, and I need to know. I've heard marijuana described as the gateway drug, which I've never really believed, and I've heard it described also now as the exit drug. And for those that are dealing with opioid and other issues, and then maybe it's a way to get off. Is it both? Is it neither? Does it all depend on the individual?
The gateway drug thing is basically, the research was usually funded by the Attorney General's Department, right? You can validate what you want to find in any kind of research depending who funds it. I really believe it is a powerful way to help people trying to get off of opioids. I think a Suboxone approach is probably a better way. What I teach young people, if you self-regulate externally, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, gaming, etc., you're going to have a problem. You need to self-regulate internally. If you're doing that accurately, smoking a joint is a lot better than drinking alcohol. Smoking a joint is a lot better than, a prescription from a psychiatrist, unless they really need that prescription. But a lot of prescriptions are written basically without really dealing with what's going on in the kid's life. 4 Monster drinks a day, and I'd need to be medicated. And these kids are 7-Eleven, the psychiatrist, nobody's talking.
Right.
And then the other things start to happen, like pot use, just so he feels alive again.
Yeah.
And it's better if we get a level playing field, and that's what legalization is going to do.
Very cool. So we're getting some questions here from the viewers here that are live. So we have a question from Camille here from Vancouver, and she's asking, what exactly is the risk to young people's brains by using too early? And is there evidence behind it?
Well, we're born with premature brains. Every woman would die in childbirth if we were born with full-size brains. So we are born, that's why we have to be kind of cared for until we're about 13. At around 10 to 13, 15, our brains stop growing. But the next 10 years are all, till 25, is when all the neural pathways are laid down and behaviors are learned and reinforced. It's called conditioning. So if they awake and bake and smoke all day long and they're trying to go to school, that's not going to be a good thing.
Right.
But if they have a smoke on the weekend, I don't think it's a big deal, especially if it's compared to drinking a bottle of whiskey or whatever else they're going to do, right? So, in the perfect world, no, wait till you're 25. But we don't live in a perfect world.
Right, exactly. Any more?
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
we have a
awesome.
question here from Mike. This is an email question. He goes, won't there still be black market for cannabis to kids? Will that be policed more closely once legalization leaves more resources to find these dealers?
I can't imagine it being policed any less. I mean, police love to police things, right? That's what they do, right? I started out as a police counselor, so I really understand the mentality behind that, and I think it should be. But because again, it's not going to be the good stuff. It's going to be, Mr. Dr. Doom in his basement, growing this stuff and selling it to kids on the street. But I mean, in one of the schools I've worked in lately, all the kids were standing outside and they had these e-cigarettes,
Yes.
but the cartridges were all THC oil,
Right.
and they completely had the teachers fooled. So it's kids are going to be kids, and I think this is probably the lowest risk that there is versus alcohol abuse, pharmaceutical, stealing your
stealing
mom's
things out of your
Percocets,
parents' drug cabinet,
all that
exactly.
kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Tom, we are out of time. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming in.
No
We
problem.
really appreciate it. Works with at-risk youth, part of Dan's legacy.
Yes, that's
We
right.
appreciate you coming in, Tom, and sharing your expertise with us.